It is officially spooky season. Let the spooky season intensify! And I know what you're thinking. This is not my first spooky project of the year, or maybe even of the season. I'm so sorry, Griffin. I'm so excited to do this Casper.
Oh, look, it's Casper!
Poster to celebrate its 30-year anniversary. Can you believe it? It's been 30 years. I'm pretty old. I remember when this movie came out. I remember getting these toys in the 90s from Pizza Hut. Was anybody else a part of the book club? I'm pretty sure the program was you had to read so many books and then the school would count all the books that you read and then give you a coupon to go to Pizza Hut to get a pizza for free. The 90s. So as you can imagine, Casper is just like home to me. If you can mix anything spooky and funny, I'm just gonna love it. Or add in a really good soundtrack and then you got me. So I already sketched out what I'm gonna do to this poster on a piece of paper. And if you want some sneak previews like that, go join my Patreon because they got to already see it like 3 weeks ago. And I'm gonna start with the top layer because I like to work from the top to the bottom. And the top layer is gonna be all dedicated to Whipstaff. If you don't know what Whipstaff is, it's the giant mansion where Casper and his uncles live. So let's buckle up because it's gonna get spooky and friendly. Let's go! So the first thing I have to do is cut like a second board for another layer for the top piece because that's how all the fiber optics are going to have room behind it and not be a huge mess on the very back of it. It will make more sense in a minute, but all I did was paint the board. Oh, and then I bought this moon piece from Amazon, which I think was perfect for this piece, but it had this like heavy metal type of housing that just obviously doesn't work very well when I'm trying to keep things light for like, you know, everything to go on the wall. You don't want it to be too heavy, so I had to take it all apart. So I really just wanted the moon piece because it was perfect and the lighting inside, and then I used my 3D printer to print out a ring that would house it and be a whole lot lighter. Then I could just put it all back together, and I absolutely love the lights, so I'm glad I got to reuse them because you could change like certain things. It has a remote. It's very nice. Then I used my foam cutting machine to start building out like the rocks and the hillside that Whipstaff will be on top of, and I love this machine. I highly recommend it. And I really don't have a scientific way of how I build these houses. I just kind of sketch out what I think looks proportionally right and just kind of go off of it. I always like to start with like a hard frame if I can, either out of wood or tinfoil, but sometimes I have to use like cardboard type material to get those round edges. The clay always helps stabilize everything later, but I mean, it's just, you got to make sure that if you try this, that you make it very sound beforehand, the structure I mean, because you don't want it to like collapse later when you've already spent like a lot of time sculpting something like this. But now I can start adding the polymer clay, which I use Super Sculpey, very easy to get. It's on Amazon. And I'm slowly going to work on covering every piece of the cardboard and the wood, so all you'll see in the end is all just the clay. And this is how I can add all those cool details, especially on something scaled so small. You know, I just carve into the clay to add texture and round bits. I don't know how else. Bits. Sorry. You know, sometimes I just bumble through my words, and if you've been here for a while, you know that. But this is the part that's going to make Whipstaff Manor come to life, is all these cool little details that you see in the photo. It was actually really hard to get a clear photo of the manor, but I was lucky enough that my friend Vanessa, if you know Vanessa, she is the world's biggest Casper collector. She actually has the Guinness World Record for it. She was kind enough to give me a photo that I could work off of. So big thank you to Vanessa. You're the reason that Whipstaff ended up looking so good. And now with Whipstaff done, I can start moving on to my favorite ghostly trio uncles. They just have like the best lines in the whole movie.
I love the smell of fleshies in the morning.
So first you have Stretch, which is like the leader of the uncles, which I'm working on here. I'm using a medium gray monster clay, which is not the type of clay that you bake, so you'll see later how I make a mold and cast it into resin. And you may be asking yourself, why am I using different types of clays for this project? With polymer clay, it's really cool because you can bake it and then it's just done and you're all set, but it also is pretty heavy. When I use this clay and make a mold, it gives me the opportunity to make it into any other kind of material I want, which I usually back with foam so that way things are lighter for these types of projects. There's definitely pros and cons of each of the clays. Like, unfortunately, making a mold costs more money and takes more time, but for certain instances, you really should. Now I'm moving on to the uncle named Fatso. You would think they would come up with a little bit better of a name, but no, his name is Fatso.
Hubba hubba. Fatso, you animal.
Though without the uncles, there really would be no comic relief in this movie. One of the best parts of the whole movie is when the ghosts dive into Dr. Harvey and, do the possession thing in the mirror, which I won't ruin for you if you haven't seen it. Though it would be really weird if you haven't seen the movie and you're watching this video. Go watch the movie right now, if that's you. They just re-released the DVD for the 30th anniversary, so go buy that and watch it. And now I'm going to move on to the final ghost, Stinky. Yes, I know, they were super creative with these names. But at least he lives up to his name, right? Fun fact, the ghostly trio were originally introduced in the comics in the 1950s, and they were usually just called the ghostly trio. There was no explanation of it being Casper's uncles or anything like that, but it was later brought out in TV and films. Their gross out humor was originally inspired by the Three Stooges. In the 1995 movie, this was the early showcase for CGI. Which does have its place, but in my opinion, I rather have real effects than CGI. For instance, if I'm watching a horror movie, I want a special effects artist making that gore and that real blood, quote unquote real blood. I don't want to see it computer animated put into the film later. And now with all the uncles done, I can start pouring the molds. This slimy blue silicone is from Smooth On. It's called Mold Fast 16, I believe, or 15, 16 or 15. It is my favorite way to make molds, but it is sometimes more expensive than say like a brush on silicone. Let's speed this up so it looks cool. Now with the molds cured and set, I can start pulling out the clay so that way I can pour resin and foam into it. And then you get these beautiful pieces that are, like I said, resin on the outside and foam in the inside. They are very lightweight and perfect for this piece. And they are ready to be painted. There's a couple of different versions that I could have painted them. Like obviously in the movie, they're more clear in certain parts with like highlights on them. But I went with the classic movie poster look. That pretty much is just a mixture of different whites and blues to give it highlights to make them pop. And of course, painting the eye colors in, 2 of them have brown eyes and the main guy, Stretch, has purple eyes. Interesting. And now I can start finally adding them to that backboard that I painted earlier. Placing the mountain layer and making sure that each uncle has a great spot in the sky. Now I'm going to put Whipstaff in its place so I can sort of kind of get a feel of how it's all going to look. I use a piece of scrap paper to kind of give an idea of where I want the lighthouse and the gate. But before I put any of that permanently in place, I need to pull in the fiber optic cables. I did a couple little test areas to make sure that the hole was going to be the perfect size for the cable to fit through. I found that my Dremel made the perfect size for these fiber optic cables to slide through. And then on the other side, I just clipped off any extra. And did that just about 100 times. And then I could put the lighthouse in place. I was so happy I got to include the lighthouse in this scene because it was just such a cool part of the movie. Now I can start working on the ground. I paint out a layer of what will be water later, and use a mixture of plaster and sand to start giving texture to where the rocks are gonna be. And with it dry, I could go back and paint it before I started working on like the moss part of it. Obviously, Whipstaff hasn't been taken care of in many years, so I had to make sure that it was very creepy and overgrown. I also bought these cute tiny trees that worked out perfectly for this. And then of course I had to add Kerrigan's car hanging off the cliff, like she mowed down that tree and was just there. And these are some fancy posts that I made to hold the gate up, and all it is foam, and I took a pencil and carved each brick into it. Very easy to make, but looks so real. But before I could put that down, I had to redo part of the ground because I just didn't like it, and I'm a perfectionist, I know. But every single part has to be perfect, like all these little details matter in the end. Like these tiny little trees in the back corner. Are you gonna see them? No. Do they matter? Absolutely. I poured UV resin for the water and gave it texture with some water ripples. And now we're gonna move on to the middle layer. The idea behind this layer was to have 3 different parts, each a different scene from inside the manor. So the first thing I had to do was sketch out 3 arches that you were going to be able to see into. Then I cut out the 3 arches so I can start sanding it down and putting things like rounding it out to make it more detailed. This was definitely the least favorite part of the project. I really hate sanding this foam. It gets gritty and nasty and everything, but it was worth it in the end. Then I used the hot wire foam cutting machine again to cut out some detail pieces that I could place on the columns to make them look even fancier. So with the front layer done, I could start working on the back layer of all these different scenes that I wanted to create. The middle scene that I wanted to create was a nod to Kerrigan and Dibs when they first got to the manor. There's this really funny moment where he's holding a lighter and she's kind of like hiding behind him as they're talking to Casper. So I knew I wanted to recreate that.
Are you the caretaker?
No.
Is he a transient?
Is he Are you a transient?
No, not exactly.
So I just recreated the front hall, making sure that it still looked very classy but dark and dingy. Then I needed a little Kerrigan and Dibs for the scene that I made out of polymer clay. Fun fact, Kerrigan was inspired by Cruella de Vil, and the actor who played Dibs, known for Monty Python, improvised most of his lines. And then I just made sure his hand looked like he was holding that lighter up in the air so I could put an LED lighter in it. And then giving them a paint job before adding them into the front hall. Now I could start working on the library scene. There's this part where the 2 doors are glowing like Harvey's wife is coming through them as a spirit to come say hi or whatever. So I wanted to recreate the library, which included cutting out a bunch of foam, little tiny pieces, and painting them as books. And of course adding that spiral staircase that the chair rides down. And then of course Casper's baseball glove and baseball. And for the last scene, I'm going to recreate Dr. Harvey in the ballroom with the vacuum cleaner, just like Clue. I just love this part of the movie. I mean, how smart is it to suck up the ghost uncles into the vacuum? Brilliant. And can we talk about how cute Bill Pullman was? I mean, he was just adorable. I absolutely loved his character. I mean, just the amount of loyalty he has to Kat's mom. I'm going to be that person. My husband and I have been together almost 20 years now. I literally could not imagine life without him. I would go around trying to find his spirit as well. Now with Dr. Harvey in place, the middle layer is done and we can move on to the one that I wanted to create the most, the basement laboratory. I had the idea that I wanted the moving chair as part of the scene, and it was really difficult to do, but I figured it out finally by using this Lego set. I went through like 3 different options for that, like ride track, and I'm so glad that I ended up finding this. So when recreating the scene, I wanted it to have the same feeling as the film, where it felt like it was underground. So I recreated a rock wall and gave it lots of good texture, making little skylights, placing the lights for the water part. Oh, and recreating the scaffolding, a huge pain in my butt. And now I could start working on the Lazarus. I just cut out a circle and started sanding down horrible foam everywhere. But I think it was worth it. All the cool little details that I got to put on the foam really made this pop and look exactly like the Lazarus in the movie. Then I poured some resin below the machine and added some polyfoam later to give it kind of a smoky look. Then I sculpted a chair out of clay. This is actually the second attempt. The first time I had cats sitting on the chair and it just did not look right, so this looks way better. And I made sure to pay attention to details on it because it's a Victorian chair and it has all those cool little swirls and side pieces. Then of course I just painted it that classic red. Then I decided the piece needed like a scientific-y looking control panel, which was a lot of fun for me to make. After all, it is a science lab, so put more science stuff around. Then I made a little cat that could sit behind the desk and, push the button for the Lazarus machine to come out in her little white dress. Probably one of my favorite parts is that they have a book that says Frankenstein with like a button to push inside on the desk, and I just love that nod. I love when like newer movies reference the older monster movies like that. So cool. Then I made this kind of weird light that just looks science-y. I don't know. I just thought it looked cool. Oh, and I made sure to have the treasure chest, of course, from the safe. And then I added a little sled because Casper explains that he got sick after sledding and that's how he became a ghost. And now, of course, I need to sculpt the friendliest ghost of all, Casper. I tried using this translucent type clay to see if it would give Casper more of a ghost effect, but it didn't. But that's okay, it still turned out really good. Fun fact, this film was the first to have a fully computer-generated lead character who interacted so naturally with the live actors. It actually really shows the skill of these actors because I could never act with nothing else. They said that they actually had tennis balls attached to sticks so they would, know where to look and stuff, where the ghost would supposedly be. But can you imagine just like reading lines to a tennis ball? I can't do it. You can also see that I'm watching Casper for like the 50th time in the background. One of my favorite things to do is watch the movie while I'm making the fan art or listen to the soundtrack, which I did many times during this process. And here I am fixing the wire to the back of the box so it looks like he's floating there. And finishing up the paint job before moving on to making the Lazarus potion bottle. I actually made one of these about 10 years ago, which I will try to post a photo now. And since then, my skill level has gotten so much better, so I think that I did a way better job on this one. And here I am curing that UV resin. And now I'm just gonna add some cute little details and finish painting it before I put it in Casper's hands. And now it's time for the reveal. And as always, a big shout out to my Patreon coven. Without you, I would not be able to make these videos, so thank you, thank you, thank you. You all are the cat to my Casper. And not to worry, Ghost and Ghouls, spooky season is not done yet. I still have a few projects up my sleeve, so I'll see you real soon. Love you, bye!